edition of Group Coaching Explore Nutrition. Thanks for being here. Um, I don't know about you guys. I know a few of you are up north Wisconsin, but we've had some pretty crummy, rainy weather lately. So I'm kind of looking forward to having this weather dry up a little bit and having some sunshine. It's amazing. We really haven't had too much rain these past few months, but when we do, it kind of really weighs on me. So hopefully in the next few days we'll dry out and have a little sunshine. But anyways, hi and welcome. A couple more people filtered in. Okay, cool. We are going to get started. All right. So last week on our first session, we talked a little bit more about our motivation. What's motivating us to be part of these sessions? What's motivating us to be part of the change right now? We talked a little bit about our why. And then we started formulating that wellness vision. And a few of you sent me your wellness visions and started formulating some SMART goals, which I do want to say that if you did, thank you for doing that. I think that's a really great opportunity for accountability. So if anybody is interested and wants to send me that information via email, please feel free to do so. So that is always an option as we go through these weeks. And then our session today is going to focus on clean eating. What is clean eating? What does it look like from day to day, meal to meal? And then we're going to talk about balanced eating. This picture on the screen is, if you don't have it in front of you, is kind of some vegetables and fruits kind of balancing on top of each other. And I think we'll talk a little bit about simplicity and kind of formulating a plan moving forward with how we can best set ourselves up for success. But really the word that comes to mind with that is simplicity versus trying to balance it all and have everything be perfect. Just, making those first steps towards health with your nutrition doesn't have to be a balancing act. It can really be a simple concept, especially in our worlds where we're being torn in 20 million directions at any moment, and why not make at least one thing simple, right? So that's going to be our plan for today. So we'll jump right into it. So clean eating. What is clean eating? It's oftentimes a buzzword people often use to explain many different things. So I'll kind of give you what my perspective is and what I've kind of formulated it to be. It is a broad term, but hopefully, it'll give you a little bit more insight to what to look for when we specifically say clean eating. A clean diet or clean eating is eating the way nature was intended to be eaten. I think back think back 20, 50, 100, 500 years and kind of like look at how people ate and kind of, think of that and, the simplicity of food and what it really is intended to be like. At its simplest, clean eating is about eating whole foods or real foods, foods that are unprocessed or minimally processed, unrefined, unhandled. There's no additives or artificial coloring, making them as close to their natural form as possible. So that's clean eating. And once again, there's definitely some variations, but to focus, if your focus is on clean eating, that is really the bare bones, I guess foundation of what you're supposed to be looking for with clean eating. This is, I'm not trying to deter anybody, but this is a very difficult way of eating. So kind of keeping this as the 80-20 rule, if you can, focusing on most of your meals, having minimally processed, unrefined, unprocessed food. I'll go in a little bit more about what you can look for when you start your journey of clean eating. So really, the first and foremost thing on the list is to limit processed foods. Processed foods are everywhere. Basically anything that can be found in a box, bag, a can, or package. Although, there's obviously some like few exceptions to the rule with that. Like if you think of a bag of spinach, right? That's clean, but the majority of your foods should be fresh. So you think about any convenience food, any fast food, frozen meals, those are all very processed foods. Number two, limit sugar and salt. So if you're focusing on eliminating processed foods, this will easily fall into line with that. A lot of our foods have added salt or added sugar for preservatives or shelf life, for flavor. That those are all additives that can be in those types of foods. Number three is don't drink your calories. Think about, how many calories and sugar is in coffees and frappuccinos and soft drinks and whatever. That is a lot of calories that are empty. There's and a lot of sugar that really has no benefit to it. So I would first and foremost choose water. I think that's really just the best thing to focus on. And then going for the unsweetened beverages like teas and sparkling waters and black coffee. Those are really kind of the best bet for when you're drinking non-caloric drinks. And then number four is to limit ingredients. If you think about focusing on finding foods with ingredients that first you can read. And my guess is that if you can read them, there'll be very few of them. So the best bet is to kind of focus on very few, 5 or less if you can. If you have one of the foods I kind of just think about immediately is salsa. A very simple concept to food, right? And it is minimally processed, but it doesn't have to be. It definitely can be something that you have 5 different choices at the grocery store. And my bet is that you can find one that has real tomatoes, real jalapenos, real onions, and seasonings that you can actually understand and know what they mean. So just a few things to kind of keep in mind when you are looking to change over to clean eating. All right, and then I just have a few more examples to give you some visuals on the screen. Is a few different phases of the processed foods that we can kind of focus on. So in the upper left-hand corner is homemade chicken noodle soup, something that we may have all, made at some point, but we know where the chicken comes from. We know where the celery and the carrots and the onions and the broth all come from, and it's not processed at all in the sense where it's not altered as far as the makeup other than cutting and cooking, right? And then in the middle is a can of soup. And, the homemade chicken noodle soup, we know the ingredient list, right? And then the can of chicken noodle soup, we probably can recognize a few of the ingredients, but some of the ingredients we probably can't recognize. And then the one on the right is the mix for the chicken noodle soup. And my guess is we probably can't recognize any of those ingredients. So those are a good transition of what to look for when you are focusing on clean eating. A few more, we'll kind of go down, is whole milk, right? Even if you want to go to the extreme of unpasteurized whole milk, right, on the left. Then we have a half and half creamer, and then we have a sugary creamer that somebody may add to their coffee. Below that is the apple, right, from the orchard. In the middle is applesauce. Still minimally processed. We can have very few additives, but still a processed food. And then we have an apple turnover or apple something baked good of some sort. And then below that we have some type of beef. We have on the left beef that potentially is from a free-range cattle with no antibiotics added. Middle, more processed, potentially some more antibiotics. And then a ground patty. And then a few other ones. The other one I do want to highlight is the eggs. I have kind of a funny story. I have a I have 2 young kids, and my son had once said to me, I normally get brown eggs from a friend of mine that has chickens, and one time I got them from the store and they were white. He's like, Mom, what's wrong with these eggs? They're white. And it just, with somebody who is 4 or 5 years old, that is like, this concept of, wow, yeah, what do we do to our eggs? Why do we have to make them white? Why do we have to process them when they're so much better when they're not and they're right from, the chicken, essentially. So kind of a fun story. But anyways, once again, just a few images to kind of get you thinking more about clean eating and what that potentially would look like. All right, and then the next area I want to talk a little bit more about tonight is balancing your diet. And when I talk about this, it's specifically meal to meal, day to day. So what do we really want to focus on is we essentially want a diet that can provide our body with all the essential nutrients, all the essential vitamins and minerals to maintain our body functions, essentially. The cells, the tissues, the organs, to get that functionality at the prime place that you can be, right? So oftentimes people focus lots on calorie counting, and I think that's very helpful especially with weight loss and focusing on that. But what I would strongly encourage, if you're in that place, to be calorie counting, really focus on where your calories are coming from. And specifically speaking with that, focusing on the macronutrients. So on the screen, we have the carbohydrates, the fats, and the proteins. And those are the 3 macronutrients that our foods are essentially made up of. And all 3 of these areas are very important, and a certain amount of each of these are essential for our diet. So keeping that in mind. So healthy fats help you feel full and satisfied. They're really good for absorbing nutrients. You can find these in foods such as fish and nuts and avocados and oils like olive oil. So those are really good to have, just good brain health too. And then proteins, lean proteins specifically help and build muscle mass. They also are, just a really good source of energy. So kind of keeping that in your diet as well as complex carbohydrates. And this is really the primary source of fuel, specifically for our muscles and our brain. So regular intake of this can help maintain your blood sugars, those diabetic focuses too. So kind of keeping that in mind. And regular intake is good for energy levels. I don't know if you ever have been on a low-carb diet, which you may or may not have been on, but oftentimes you feel sluggish or kind of like in a cloud. So this is really a good way to add energy to just get through the day. And, that can be from whole grains, it can be from beans and fruits, all in your diet. And generally speaking, carbohydrates should make up about 45 to 65% of your calories. Fat should make up about 20 to 35%, and then protein 10 to 35%. And I want to stress the generalness of those ranges, because if you're looking to have different goals, focus on different meals, guides or diets, those can vary depending on what your ultimate goal is. So I would just keep that as general as possible. All right, let me flip off of here for a second. All right. Okay, and then wanted to get more into kind of what a balanced diet would also look like. Once again, we are bombarded by social media and, what everybody is saying you should and shouldn't eat, and what's the most important thing for our diets. And in all reality, as I mentioned in the beginning of our session today, is to keep it as simple as possible. So what I would strongly suggest is just to focus on fruits and vegetables as the main dishes of your food. If you're having grains, have whole grains, making sure that they're whole grains. Proteins, have lean meats and beans as your primary source of protein. And then dairy, if that's part of your diet, that is also, a good source of fat, so keep that in mind. But, having that 1 or 2 servings in your day is fine. And then kind of limiting those, as I mentioned, those processed foods, those sugars, those foods high in sugar, and really focusing on clean eating as much as possible. So I think that's kind of a good place to be right now. I know that's a lot of information. Hopefully you did receive the PowerPoint from me. And I think before our next session, if you want to reach out to me and just kind of say how things are going, or if there's any specific area that you do need help or support in, please feel free to let me know, and I would be more than happy to talk through some things or email you some resources in that specific area. So I think beyond our session today, next week we're going to talk a little bit more about the plate method, which is really focusing on those macronutrients and how to build your meals. And then we'll have some suggestions on meals to kind of get you going on your way. So thank you guys for being here today, and I appreciate you taking the time out. I will just send out the recording in case you have missed a portion, or if you want to re-listen. Otherwise, we'll plan on talking to you next week, Wednesday at 5 o'clock Central Time. All right, thanks, guys. Have a good night.